Close to 70% of adults in developed countries are now overweight or obese. Depression and anxiety have tripled in 20 years. Type 2 diabetes is showing up in children now, and despite billions spent on health campaigns, every statistic keeps getting worse. What if this isn't about people lacking willpower? What if every piece of health advice you've been given was built on flawed assumptions from the beginning? I'm Dr. Max. I'm a physical therapist, but I'm obsessed with medical research that explains what genuinely keeps people healthy versus what breaks them down. And I've seen the same pattern thousands of times. Someone follows official guidelines perfectly and it doesn't work. For 50 years, public health guidance stripped away so much biological nouns that it became functionally useless. People didn't fail the advice failed them, and by the time you realize something's wrong, your metabolism has been breaking down for years. Why does eat less, move more fail for almost everyone? The answer is the most common advice given to anyone struggling with weight is breathtakingly simple. Eat less and move more. Create a calorie deficit. It's just physics, right? Energy balance. Except that the human body isn't a closed thermodynamic system. It's an adaptive biological organism that responds to energy restriction by slowing down, conserving resources, and increasing hunger signals. When you restrict calories, your metabolic rate doesn't stay constant. It changes. Leptin, the fullness hormone, drops. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone, rises. Thyroid hormones decrease to conserve energy. The body becomes more efficient at extracting calories from food and storing them as fat. Muscle tissue gets broken down for energy. But here's what almost nobody tells you. What actually controls where energy goes in your body? The answer is hormones, not calories. They control where energy goes. Insulin determines whether glucose gets stored as fat or burned as fuel. Cortisol influences fat distributions, pushing storage towards the abdomen. Testosterone and estrogen affects muscle maintenance. If any of these are dysregulated, you can count calories perfectly and still struggle to lose weight, or worse, lose muscle while retaining fat. People don't have a weight problem, they have a hormonal problem, a sleep problem, a stress problem, a muscle mass problem. Weight is the downstream consequence of all these factors, not the upstream causes. I've seen this play out countless times in clinical practice. Someone comes in exhausted, unable to lose weight despite eating salads and walking daily. Thyroid functions is borderline. Cortisol levels are elevated and they're sleeping poorly because they're hungry. Their body has downregulated metabolic rate to match the reduced calorie intake. And here's what makes even more problematic. When you return to normal eating, your suppressed metabolism means you gain the weight back faster than you lose it, often ending up heavier than when you started. This cycle has been repeated millions of times, and the standard response is to blame the individuals. But what if the approach itself is broken? Now, here's something that never made it into a standard health advice, but it can change your blood sugar response by up to 75%. Let me ask you a question. What if the order you eat your foods matters more than what you eat? The answer is you've probably never been told that the sequence in which you eat can change your blood sugar responses by up to 75%. Fiber first, protein second, and starch last. This simple pattern can flatten the glucose spike from the exact same meal by half. Why? Because fiber slows gastric emptying and forms a physical mesh in the digestive tract that delays carbohydrates absorption. Protein stimulates hormones that prime insulin responses. Eating vegetables before pasta creates a completely different metabolic outcome than eating pasta before vegetables, even though the total nutrients are identical. One produces a sharp glucose spikes followed by a crash that triggers hunger and cravings 2 hours later. The other produces a gentle rise and gradual decline that keeps you satisfied for hours and hours. But timing goes even deeper than sequence. Meal timing operates on circadian principle most people don't know exists. Insulin sensitivity peaks in the morning and declines throughout the day. Eating a large carbohydrate-rich meals at 8 a.m. produces less fat storage and better glucose control than eating the identical meal at 8 p.m. Your pancreas, your liver, your muscle cells all follow internal clock synchronized to light exposure and feeling patterns. When you eat against the pattern, even if the food is healthy, you impair metabolic processing, disrupt the sleep quality, and increase inflammation in your body. The speed at which you eat changes everything as well. Eating quickly bypasses the satiety signals that take about 20 minutes to register. If you finish your meal in 5 minutes, you've potentially consumed twice as much food as you needed before your brain even restored satisfaction. A standard health advice told people what to eat, but it never mentioned how, when, or in what order. That omission left out half the question. But there is something even more critical that's been completely ignored for decades: a health crisis hiding in plain sight. Let me ask you a question. What's the biggest health threat as you age that almost nobody talks about? You'll probably say heart disease or cancer. Almost nobody says losing muscles. And yet sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass and strength, is one of the most powerful predictors of disability, falls, metabolic diseases, and premature deaths. After age 30, if you do nothing to prevent it, you lose 3 to 8% of your muscle mass every single decade. That accelerates after 60. By the age of 80, many people have lost 30 to 40% of their peak muscle mass, and almost nobody talks about it. Not your doctor, not public health campaigns. Because muscle is not just about movement. Muscle is an endocrine organ that secretes hormone called mucinous, which regulates metabolism and reduces your inflammation and supports your brain health. It's the largest glucose sinking in your body, absorbing blood sugar and improving insulin sensitivity. In a metabolically healthy person with adequate muscle mass, muscle absorbs roughly 80% of glucose from the bloodstream following a meal. When you lose muscle mass, you lose glucose disposal capacity, and blood sugar stays elevated longer, and your pancreas has to secrete more insulin to compensate. Over time, that creates insulin resistance, the foundation of type 2 diabetes. A study tracking over 13,000 adults found that for every 10% of increasing skeletal muscle mass, there was an 11% reduction in insulin resistance. But public health advice completely missed this. For decades, public health campaigns focus on one message: move more, walk 10,000 steps, take the stairs. They are all good advice for cardiovascular health, but here's what almost nobody mentions: walking does virtually nothing to preserve muscle mass. Muscle responses to a specific stimulus, mechanical tensions under progressive overloads. Walking doesn't provide sufficient stimulus for that. A study found that participants who walked 30 minutes 5 days per week for 12 months showed no significant change in muscle mass. Meanwhile, participants who did resistance training twice per week increased muscle mass by 2.4 kilograms over 5 pounds. Yet, for decades, public health emphasized cardio while muscle preservation was treated as optional. Now, here's what connects all of this: something operating completely beneath conscious awareness. What if depression, brain fog, and stubborn weight gain all trace back to the same problem? I'm talking about chronic inflammation, one of the most important yet overlooked drivers of modern diseases. This isn't acute inflammation from injury. This is a systemic, low-grade, persistent inflammation quietly damaging your tissues for years before you notice anything's wrong. When inflammation becomes chronic, pro-inflammatory cytokines stay elevated long-term. These molecules circulate through your bloodstream, cross into your brain, and disrupt neurotransmitters production. Take depression. When inflammatory markers are elevated, they impair the production of serotonin, dopamine, and noradrenaline. Your brain interprets inflammation as sickness, triggering withdrawal, low energy, loss of motivations, the exact hallmarks of depression. Some people with treatment-resistant depression have notably high inflammatory markers. When you address the inflammation, their mood improves without antidepressant. But this wasn't part of public health messaging. The metabolic effects are just as significant. Chronic inflammation blocks key metabolic pathways. It impairs insulin signaling, making cells resistant to glucose uptake, creating leptin resistance, where your brain can no longer sense your body's fat stores. This drives hunger even when you have plenty of stored energy. Inflammation shifts metabolism towards fat storage and away from fat oxidation. What drives inflammation? Ultra-processed foods, high in refined sugars and seed oils, chronic sleep deprivation, sedentary behaviors, social isolation, and chronic stress. What suppresses it? Whole food rich in polyphenols and omega-3s, regular movements, quality of sleep, stress recovery. People thought they were just tired when they actually inflamed. They thought they were depressed when they actually inflamed. They thought they couldn't lose weight because of poor discipline when they were just actually inflamed. And the health advice they received never connected these dots. So, why has this information been missing from health advice for 50 years? Why don't doctors teach this to you? Here's the answer. Here's something most people don't realize. Doctors receive almost no training in nutrition, metabolism, or lifestyle medicine during medical school. I've been through years of medical training. I received mainly 2 weeks of formal nutrition education. Only 2 weeks. Can you believe it? Medical education is fundamentally built around pathology and treatments. You learn to diagnose diseases and prescribe interventions, medications, procedures, and surgeries. Particularly lifestyle prevention barely appears in the curriculum. This isn't malaise, it's institutional structure. Medical schools teach disease management, not health optimization. The result is a healthcare system staffed by highly trained professionals who know how to treat acute illness exceptionally well, but have little expertise in preventing chronic disease in the first place. If you've ever followed the health advice perfectly and still didn't get results, here's what you need to understand. You didn't fail the advice. The advice failed you. A wrong map leads to the wrong distinction, no matter how hard you try. For 50 years, public health guidance provided a map based on incomplete science, oversimplified messaging, and institutional biases. It told you to count calories without explaining hormones. It emphasized micronutrients without mentioning meal timing. It recommended movement without specifying type or recovery needs. And when you followed the map faithfully and didn't reach your distinction, you were told the problem was you. But your body isn't broken. It's following biological orders shaped by millions of years of evolution. If you eat foods that spike blood sugar repeatedly, your body stores excess energy as fat. That's insulin doing its job. If you restrict calories without adequate protein, your body breaks down muscles. That's survival physiology. If you sleep poorly chronically, your body elevates hunger hormones. That's ghrelin and leptin responding to sleep deprivation. Your body isn't misbehaving. The guidance was incomplete, oversimplified, and often contradictory. In the next video, I'll show you why the same diet works for some people and fails for others. This is Dr. Max. You didn't fail. The system failed you. It's time to build something better. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.